Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Michael Tierney, and this is Chicago Artist Circle. Joining me today at the Goodman Theater are 6 individuals, 6 artists, 6 voices for inclusion, all breaking, fighting, and redefining gender norms not only within our theater community, but our society as a whole. Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you here. Let's get right to it. Why Chicago? What brought you here? What made you stay? Why did you return if you left?
Well, of all of the schools that I auditioned for, Chicago was the best place for me to end up. I went to Roosevelt. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. So I came from a small town and wanted to get my training in a city that has an established theater community. And so that's how I ended up here. And I had that dream that every theater child has of going to Broadway immediately after graduating school. And then ended up falling in love with Chicago and its artistry. So here I am, and here I stayed.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Jerome?
I came here for school as well. I went to Columbia. Oh my gosh, I got here 2012. Been here for like 7 years.
Nice.
Doesn't feel like I've been here that long. Wow. And I loved my program, and I met some really great people, and I ended up getting an agent, which I didn't think was gonna happen, especially as like a non-binary person. So then I was like, oh, I'll stay here. And then I got like some cool like kids show jobs, and that was really cool. And then I just like stayed.
Hannah?
I moved here to study at the Second City because I love comedy, and I had a dream similar of immediately getting on SNL. Didn't work out. But I'm honestly fine with that because don't know that I want that job anymore. So, yeah, and I'm happy to be here, and I keep getting cast in musicals, which isn't a bad thing, but, you know, and I'm happy. Little boy, lesbian, it's fine. But, yeah, I don't know. Usually comedy is my thing.
Jaq?
Well, I originally moved out of undergrad to New York City in 2005, and so I lived there for 5 years already. And when I went to grad school, which was in 2010, I was trying to consider like where I wanted to go after graduate school. And when I graduated in 2013, I knew that I didn't want to go back to New York City. And I did not want to move to LA because I did not like LA when I went to visit it. So the only obvious choice, of course, was to be in Chicago.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Regina?
Hello.
Hello.
Why did I come and why did I stay? So I came here in 2016 as part of a Logan Fellowship through the Logan Foundation to be the Associate Artistic Director of a company that no longer exists. So when that went up, I had to kind of decide if I was going to stay. It was a very difficult decision, mainly because when the company collapsed, it was January, and I'm from California. But that said, California, the Bay Area specifically, it's such a high-tension environment in terms of there's 1,000 evictions a month in Oakland, so trying to be a working artist there and have housing is almost impossible. But the thing about Chicago is that when that happened, when I didn't have a job, et cetera, it was the first time that so many people had come to my aid, specifically that I was able to get meetings and go have those conversations and strategize with mentors, and that was what made me stay, specifically also connecting with Isaac Gomez and Marcus Gardley. Like, they really convinced me to stay here because they happened to be doing Wonder in My Soul and let me like follow them around.
Awesome. And you recently are taking on a new position. Correct?
Yes, tomorrow is my first day.
I thought it was very recent.
Yeah, as the associate producer at Court Theater. So
Congratulations, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do more research on this, but I have a friend in California named SK who works at California Shakespeare Theater, and we were trying to think like who are the non-binary and trans producers at like the regional theater level. So I'm doing more research into that because they are the only one that I know besides myself. So it's a little spooky. So I'm hoping we can kind of start that wave next, of change.
Of course.
In admin.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sawyer.
my story's much like Parker's, just 4 years earlier.
Okay.
Parker and I went to the same school. I was a senior when Parker was a freshman. I'm from a small town in Iowa, and my drama teacher did the fast track program at Roosevelt University. I have no clue what I would have done had I not had her. I don't know what I would have done, truly. Maybe gone to University of Iowa and been a hairdresser or something. I don't know. But she was like, you've got to go here. And so I got in and I went there and I started working very consistently here after. And so it didn't make sense to pack up and move when I was continuing to work and actually make money. The Chicago theater community really opened itself up to me, and I was very in tune with it because I think Chicago is ahead of the game, specifically with, the non-binary, transgender, non-conforming scene. It's like there's a lot more acceptance and understanding of that here, and I think that was always something that I was drawn to, even before I may have known anything.
Do the rest of you feel that way? That Chicago is more... Really?
Yeah.
For sure.
I gave up acting before I moved here.
Okay.
I wanted to be a director because when I was coming out, I was trying to audition, and it was really painful and awkward, and just explaining as I was coming out too. Like now it's different, but as I was coming out, trying to explain like who I was and how I wanted to be seen, and I was a musical theater ingenue, so it was just like really complicated. And I didn't act again until I'd been here for almost 2 years, and then people started to ask me to do things and source things, and I had never experienced that before.
That is part of why I came here as well, because especially in comedy, you create so much of your own material, and you write sketches that are important to you, and it didn't really even occur to me that was part of why I came here, was because I didn't know, I didn't even know that a non-binary person, even though I didn't know that I was at the time, or kind of knew, I didn't realize that I could be in plays and not have to wear a dress, or that sort of thing. And so it was kind of I have to make my own shit. And there are so many opportunities to do that, both in the theater world, in the musical theater world, and in comedy. There are so many places to put up your own stuff, and it's a great community to hone your voice as an artist, in a way that I don't know if in bigger cities you can kind of find your voice.
Yeah, I don't know if we could actually speak about New York or LA or any of these other cities, because I obviously am not there anymore. Sure. But I think for me what was so nice is that the queer community in Chicago seems to be so directly aligned with the theater and arts community as well. There's just so much overlap. There's so many opportunities for you to have your own voice and to create your own work, and people will come and support you, that I would struggle to move to a new city right now anyways. Yeah, it just feels that overlay is important, I think, between those two communities.
Yeah, I can't speak for New York. I have friends that live out there that are doing great. My experience has been, I've worked, but it's the type of work that you were offered. And when I graduated school, I had 4 jobs. So I worked at American Apparel, R.I.P. Oh my God! I worked at American Apparel. I played a manic 6-year-old in a show. With Emerald City. It was so fun. So I was a part of a queer performance group called the Chanels. We consisted of Monet, Mia was the drag queen, Dark Dynasty, and myself, Baby. We were she would lip sync, and we would do choreography behind her, and then we would also the 3 of us would do choreography together. It was good when it was good. It was good when it was good, but it was bad when it was bad. So I was working I would go do my kids show at 9 a.m. and then I would have a 4-hour break. So I'd go to American Apparel and I'd go sleep on the floor in backstock before my shift. And then I would work at American Apparel until 10. And then I would get off work, I would take the bus, go home, change, get ready to host an event until 5 a.m.
That is so real.
Do it all over again.
And then I would just do it all over again on time. And also, I was auditioning. So sometimes I'd be all right, okay. So I gotta be late to this job but during this job, if I just take like a 45-minute lunch break instead of like 20 minutes, I can go to this audition. Hopefully they don't fire me, and, like they're not mad. And like, thank goodness I was blessed with. I've been blessed with some really great employers that have been like super understanding. But like working 4 jobs is no joke. It's not fun.
And it's that thing too, I think if you wear yourself down that much, at least in my case, you don't even, I don't even look forward to performing, which is the worst feeling because it's my favorite thing in the world.
Right.
And that's definitely a sign of burnout, for sure.
That's like the toughest thing to grapple with is like, I love performing and I put myself through so much to be able to perform. That like I should be grateful for all of the opportunities that I have to perform, but some days it's like, wow, I'm tired, and all I want to do is call my understudy to go on and sleep.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, I have to tell you, I was conversing with Parker before today about the episode, and I told them that the last thing I wanted was for this to turn into, and it has not, and I don't think it will, but the last thing I personally wanted was it to turn into a history lesson. But I rather than ask, what does non-binary mean? I prefer to ask, what does non-binary mean to you? Also, is non-binary even something that you use? Is there a term that you prefer?
I like non-binary.
Yeah.
Whoever invented it, I was like, yeah, thank you. Because when I've come out 4 times.
That's real.
I've come out as straight, as a lesbian, as non-binary, and as trans. And it was only until I got to the non-binary trans part that I realized, like, how much of a struggle it was just to get to there. I remember when I was in college and even in grad school, when people would call me a lesbian, or within the community, if they'd be like, "What up, dyke?" You know, it was always, and I say that word with it's like as like an ownership for people who identify that way, and that's great for them.
I had a teacher who used it because she said she thought lesbian sounded like a bug with a lot of legs, and that was like her reasoning for like her identity. I was like, I don't know.
Bitch, that's a house centipede.
That is one of their centipedes. Yeah. Yeah, but like whenever people would call me a lesbian, even like friends, I would always just kind of like, yeah, that's what I am. But then secretly I'm like, I don't know if that really fits, you know? So then, and it wasn't until coming to Chicago and going to Salon-a-thon that I was like, ooh, what is this? Who are these folks? These are really interesting and beautiful people that I am feeling very drawn towards. And they identify as non-binary and trans, and like, oh, okay, so is that what I am then? And so I would like go and I would read everything about it in secret in a dark room, I guess. I don't know what this means. And you know, and the more I would go to events that the trans community was at, the non-binary community was at, the more it started to feel right, and the more it was like, and then I would start using it myself, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, and like that feeling of like settling into your skin is like. After 4 times, or after it's so long, because I'm 37, so I came out as trans literally 2 years ago. So I was well into my 30s by the time I was like, well, this is who I am. Oh, you know, and that's like hard as a mid-30s person to like come out that way and realize it. But once I did, it was like, yeah, okay, you know, I could breathe, you know.
Yeah, and I think like also in terms of like coming out, as actors and performers who are trying to get a limited number of jobs, coming out as non-binary can be even scarier because then it's like, this is how casting directors see me. This is how directors see me. This is going to limit my opportunities and such, because everyone looks at a non-binary person and they're like, oh, well, we don't want this to be a concept. We don't want this to be a statement that we're making by casting you in this ensemble track of a musical. You know, like there's the personal coming out, and then there's a like coming out to your friends and family, and then there's a coming out to the community, because then because it's a small community. Once one person knows that you're non-binary, everyone does. And so it's that like navigating how to do that in a world where like you're told to have like a thick skin and be able to audition and come up against everything and also be as vulnerable as possible as you can on stage.
For me, I'd always known ever since I was very small that like people would call me gay all the time, like, which is like, that's so fun. But so like that was happening, but I like there was always a part of me that was like, I don't like, yeah, but it didn't make sense. And finally, it was during the Fly Honey show. I'd been doing it for a few years. And we got to a part during Reverend Butts, which is a part of the show where one of the Fly Honey members, this particular member was Bear Bellinger, an amazing actor in our community. I think you've had him on your show.
Yes, episode
Wonderful,
2.
wonderful. And he was doing a big piece about like taking up too much space as like a cisgendered male. And they, in the rehearsal room, they were like, he asks all the men in the room to raise their hands. And I remember people are looking at me and be like, oh, raise your hand. And I was like, but that's not my experience. Like, my experience is different than that. And I got really emotional. We were at Aaron Kilmurray's apartment and doing the show. And I like started crying outside. And Aaron and Missy came out and we were like chatting. And I was just like, I could feel there was like a giant shift in me. And I finally understood the language. That was like, for me, I've always known that I was not male or female, that I was not binary, that I was not gender conforming, but there weren't words for it. And the first time I saw somebody and they were like, I'm non-binary, I was like, oh, there I am.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm like, that's what it is. It's like, oh, yeah. It was like, oh, shit. That's what it's been the whole time. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was, and I think everybody here probably on this table had that moment where it's like, and it's so odd because, like, I came out as gay. I mean, not really. I mean, my family was always like, you're gay. But it was like, so I was gay. So, like, I mean, I dressed up as Dorothy Gale for, like, school for a very long time. Like, she's been a bad bitch since day one. But it was like, when you, that release of being like, oh, this is, I'm the sun and the moon and everything in between, and I can be any facet. Like, that was a really personally freeing experience, even if, like, before the horror sets in of like, oh, how do I tell this person? Like, what will my boyfriend think of me? Like, what is my mom going to say? Like, what are my agents? Like, all those things that Parker was talking about. It's like that first moment of release, it's like, oh, amazing.
Yep.
And I had a similar experience. The first non-binary person that I met was at in college, and it was the first time that I had heard somebody go by they, them pronouns, and it made so much sense. But it also, like, I'm a Midwestern pastor's kid, and it was like, I need to be polite, and that feels like taking up space. That's really scary. And so it honestly, like, it's been a year since I came out as non-binary, and that actually happened because of an article that came out about the Jeff Award nominations. Because they eliminated gender categories. And I was nominated, and somebody wrote an article about how upset they were that more men were nominated and that no non-binary folks were nominated. And that was when I was like, oh, this, like, I can't ignore this anymore. Like, this is a real thing. And I also have this platform to kind of be like, hey, we're here. And I felt like I should kind of just be more honest and open about it. And then the cool thing is, I joined the cast of a show at Second City, and there was a song that Emily Fightmaster had written called Gender Alien, which was all about being non-binary. And the day that I came out is the day that I got cast in it.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And so then it was like such a cool way, because I was in a costume, but I came out to 250 people 6 times a week, and it was almost like then I could take off that armor of this dildo crown and like a metallic jumpsuit, and I could just be like, no, this is literally who I am. So thank you, Emily Fightmaster.
So I was found out. My mom read my text messages when it was the night before my sophomore year of high school. my parents are beautiful now, but like at the time it was a little hard. But I never really had to come out, and like I'm also like a thrift rat, so like I've been thrifting since I was 16, and I would look at this like big space and I'd be like, why would I cheat myself of all the beautiful things that I could find by going to one section? I'm gonna shop everywhere. So I bought clothes from every section, and like anytime my parents or like anybody would be like, oh, is that a girl's shirt? I'd be like, I didn't know that this inanimate object had a gender. I thought that this was a shirt that I like, so I put it on my body because I have a body. So like I've never really come out of the closet. I've just kind of existed. So it's been really nice to be able to see language and be like, oh, like that's who I am. Like that's awesome.
You know what's interesting that you mentioned about clothing is that like, so for me, like there's a difference, for me anyways, between being gender non-binary in your soul and like non-binary in your presentation. Because like for me, like I'm still quite masculine in my presentation, and only recently did I put on a fairy dress and prance around and was like, oh, I can still do this. Okay, great. And felt really great about it. But like for so long, I have resisted the color pink, and I have resisted patterns, and I have resisted being too feminine because in my soul I was resisting it so much. And I was thinking to myself about these differences between non-binary as a gender identity and non-binary as a fashion statement, if you will, or as a presentation, because a lot of my non-binary feelings live in the norms of genders and resisting what those norms mean, and not wanting to be the what people think of as being masculine, of someone who is super strong and never cries and is rough and mean, and not that all men are like this, but there are these connotations of being a man and connotations of being a woman that I was like, I don't want to be either one of those. And so being non-binary for me was where I could like decide like, oh, I can find the vulnerability in my masculine side and I can find the strength in my feminine side, but they're not attached to a binary male, female, masculine, feminine. But it's so funny to people to think that non-binary is like a new thing, and it's like, no, it's not. Like humans have been presenting non-binary for eons, right? The first woman who put on a pair of pants was non-conforming to her gender norm. So she was gender non-conforming in that moment, in presentation and in fashion. So like for people to say like this is such a new thing and I have such a hard time with it, I'm just like, no, sorry.
Do you ever feel like when you're like, so when I go into an audition, it's like, oh, it's like what you know what I mean? It's like, well, like there'll be an audition for a non-binary character. We were actually just talking about this yesterday. That like it'll be like seeing all non-binary actors, blah blah blah, and then you get there and you very quickly realize that they mean AFAB or AMAB, like you know,
which is assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth,
which is a very coded way of talking about binary. So like, which is always a thrill, and then there's always like, oh, well, like what do I? It's not, if you didn't get the sarcasm, but you just wanted to be very clear.
Because we all see each other.
It's always the same group. We're missing like 5 people. We're sorry you're not here. Right.
That's funny.
And it's like, it's always the same group, and we walk in, and you can like literally, I'll like see who like is getting more time in the room. I'm like, oh, they want this kind of non-binary person. I shouldn't have even shown up. Or like, am I wearing enough makeup? Should I wear a dress? What, like, you know, that thing, like, am I presenting enough?
The idea of like presenting non-binary enough is like this mind trip that is so frustrating because presentation is very different from identity, and casting doesn't understand that.
Not at all.
Well, so your identity is who you are, is your sense of self, and your presentation is how you dress, how you act, how you interact with your gender. And so there are non-binary people whose presentation may, on the outside, appear to align very closely with their assigned gender at birth, and there are people who don't. And so when casting directors are like, open gender, non-binary, you know, it's this idea of like, oh God, okay, do they want me to like perform my non-binary identity more, or do they want me to like be closer, lean in? And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, do I wear this? Do I put on this much makeup? Do I wear a lip? What color lip? Is it too bright? Should I wear a matte lip? And then I'm like, I'm auditioning for grocery store person number 4. Why am I freaking out?
And I think for me, like, it was a long journey for me, because like I kind of went the whole thing of I came out and I cut all my hair off. That was step one. Bought a tie, bought a bunch of shirts, started shopping in men's sections. I felt very good for a long time, for like a year. But I used to be a model. I used to do pageants. I used to look more like I do right now. And I was much smaller. So my whole life, I say this now, my whole life I was in drag. Like, I didn't know that. I never thought about gender because I was so good at the performance of femininity. And that was where I found so much value. I literally paid for college with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was who I was for so long. So when I came out, I was like, oh, well, that must mean, like, the rejection of all of those things. But then in the past, like, year, I was like, I miss my hair. And I miss these things. And it's become for me now, like it is actually more of a drag. Like, my presentation has nothing to do, actually, with my identity in a lot of ways. Like, for me, it is just a thing to dress. In a lot of ways, it's how I think about myself. Whereas, like, my identity is borderline religious, because it's like, someone once said to me, SK once said to me, I use they, them pronouns to describe all the different possibilities that live within me. And so for me, it is temporary language so that it is to be understood. And I read a great article about that, and I wish I could remember the author's name, but it's been on my mind about blackness and non-binary, and non-binary largely as a understood white term, because it is the new version of the term, right? It has been in existence for a long time. So when I say non-binary, when I say they, them, I use all my pronouns. I use all possible pronouns. I don't actually care. But I use they, them specifically so people will have a cultural track to follow, to know where I might line up. And so I've been thinking about that lately in terms of like what words actually fit and what should I actually be using in my day-to-day. But really it is for other people, because like I know who I am.
Right.
I just need you to have a guidepost for how to navigate me, I guess.
I noticed when Sawyer was referencing, seeing everyone, the same people at the auditions, I was going to say, Regina, as someone who is often behind the table, have you had the opportunity to cast non-binary folk, and do you see this? Do you agree? Do you see the same folk when you're auditioning people?
I think you do and you don't. I think I would like to highlight a really great audition process for a show that's happening right now called Works in Progress. That's been casting a lot of people in the city. And I, like I said, haven't acted in a long time, but one of the casting people was like, I heard you say once that you once acted and that you stopped acting because you weren't able to find roles that fit, and this happens to be something that fits, and would you come in? And it changed my whole attitude around like acting and comfortability and being in the room. And now that I'm on the other side, I do see there's a small community, so I do know the community pretty well, and especially because where I've been casting, it's the community that I know, so the people that I'm calling in. But that said, I'm seeing a greater specificity and ability for people to choose the material that they want to bring in, which really helps, I think, in auditions. Like, for example, and I hope I'm not blowing up their spot, but something that I loved about School at Steppenwolf auditions was that you could pick any character that you wanted out of the binary. So you could pick things from August Osage County. Amazing. And if you're a mask presenting person, you want to be Barbara, like no one's going to tell you that you can't do that. And I think that's really important to be able to self-assign, because I didn't realize how much that was part of the journey. And that said, trust. I think I didn't realize how big of a role trust plays, because I'm about to originate a play, Pro-Am by Bryn Frauenhofer, has a trans character that we're originating. And I think as I've been talking to people, we've had about 6 folks that are non-binary or trans through the process be a part of this play in different ways. But what I'm realizing is, like, as we audition and as we seek people, like, how specific I need to be. Like we're saying, in terms of what I'm actually asking of this trans woman, in every capacity. This is a play about the porn industry, right? So what am I actually asking of you? Am I asking you to show anything? Am I asking you to do an intimacy read without an intimacy person present? Am I asking you to, like, there are so many things that I want to prepare for and work through that weren't prepared for me, that I'm seeing this as an opportunity to dive into. Yeah. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned Work in Progress, which I am lucky enough to have been cast in, and I'm thrilled to be working on, and you as well. And just kind of like speaking to a couple of things. First, the like going back to the community in Chicago. For that audition, it was like I had 4 people message me with the notice, and one of the casting people at PR Casting is the company that casted the show, emailed me already and was like, I want you to come in for this. And so there's this like sense of looking out for each other that's like, they're casting us, go to this call. But the best part, my favorite part about that audition was I went in to a room with a trans person, and it was for the first time I was auditioning for someone, and I didn't have to like prove my existence and my worth for being in that room, because I feel like as non-binary actors we go into auditions and it's like, please take a chance on me. It's like, please, or it's like there's one role in a show and there are 50 of us outside, and it's like, please cast me in the one. And so to go in to Work in Progress where they were like, we have 20, 30-something roles, and we want to cast as many of them with queer and trans and non-binary people as possible. Where do you fit? To be like, I don't have to like prove my worth. I can just be an actor now. Was something I hadn't experienced in so long that it was like, this is what I want the norm to be. Like I wish that I had more rooms that I could walk into. And so that's why I think like having people behind the table is so important. Just because being able to have that connection with someone and being like, okay, I'm not here to like prove that I'm a real human being to you. I'm here to be an actor and do the job.
Yeah.
One other thing I would also add to that I think we don't talk about enough is the pressure to be aesthetically beautiful. Right? Even if you don't fit into like whatever it is, right? It's like if you are hot enough, then you can be whatever you want. I do feel like that is true. And I do feel like my perception of self and my presentation of self, even as a business person, even as an admin person, I have an understanding of like when I walk into a room full of board members, for them to understand me, the first thing I need to see is like, that person's so cute. And now I want to learn these things about them because there's a different plate that's been set. I have not personally figured out a different tactic for that yet. I'm sure as I grow, they will come. But I do think that when I see performers and things like that, that's something that comes up in rooms quite a bit, is like whether or not a person is objectively attractive, regardless of gender identity. Same as any other type of role, though, right?
How do you handle the incorrect use of pronouns when in the rehearsal room or other professional settings?
Yeah, that's tricky. I'm sure everybody at the table has dealt with this. I was so very lucky recently. I just did a production at the Steppenwolf Theater Company called Miss Black for President, written by Terrell Alvin McCraney and Tina Landau, directed by Tina Landau, starring Terrell Alvin McCraney and myself.
Excellent.
But the Steppenwolf was so great about their inclusivity with gender and race and anything else you could think of, religious, whatever. But like anything, they were so good about really catering to any actor's needs, and that was such an open room. And it was a play about the first drag queen in Chicago, or the first drag queen to run for president. Miss Joan Jett Black, Terrence Allen Smith, who now lives in San Francisco. We love you, Terrence. And we were so lucky they got to be a part of the show, and they got to be a part of all these things. And it was a really Chicago queer experience that I wasn't privy to, and I feel like a lot of people aren't, and hopefully it goes on to other places. Hopefully I'll be able to announce things soon. But fun stuff. And the room was so warm, and it was so welcome, and that's not always the case. And I've been very fortunate as an actor in Chicago to work a lot in equity musical theater, which, here's the caveat. Chicago is great for gender inclusivity and inclusion and diversity on so many levels, but at the equity theater, like equity musical theater level, it's still catching up. When I think about equity musical theater, I can't even name another person I know that shares the stage. You know what I mean? Like, not in a way that's like not people are talented enough, but they're not given the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this earlier with some of you, that I feel an immense responsibility. I'm probably a little bit older than some of you, 22, and but I've been very fortunate as somebody that's tall and that's white and can dance and sing and act fairly equally. I'm used a lot because if they don't want me for the lead role, I can cover it and dance in the ensemble. Or so like my skill set is useful in a lot of malleable ways. But when I first came out, not everybody like understood it and really tried to see it, and I was really embedded. I'm very embedded, I feel, in the Chicago musical theater equity community. And the Mercury Theater, Walter Stearns and Eugene Dazan, who like I love and they've always taken care of me, cast me as Fastrada. They were just like, you're Fastrada and Pippin. They didn't ask me any questions. I was just Fastrada. Like, and the way Walter presented it to me, he's like, well, your energy is Fastrada. Like, that's what it is. It's like, you are this character, gender aside. And like, that was a really exciting, thrilling moment for me. And I realized that I have that privilege, that I've gotten that, and not everybody does. So I do feel an immense obligation to be, just like when we were in college, Parker, like I always felt like mama to your class and everybody and you. Like, I want to pave the way for young people, young queer people, especially gender non-conforming and trans people in musical theater, because I have a thick skin. Like, you're going to have to say something really, really fucked up to like get under my skin. But that being said, being in a rehearsal process where you're with a theater company that's very well renowned and they have a lot of clout and they're trying really hard, as someone with thick skin, I get misgendered constantly. Like, not even like this morning I had to say, these are my pronouns, and then like 5 hours later something happened. It's like, it's gotten to the point now where I was like, I'm just going to wear a big black and white shirt that just says they. Because like, how is this so difficult for you? And I understand everybody has different levels of understanding and coming to the table differently. But it's like, if I have to tell you every 5 minutes what my pronouns are, like, then you don't even see me as a person, I imagine.
It's exhausting.
It's very dehumanizing. And what that for me is like, I would never want the people that I've come to be mama to or whatever to be in that experience, because what if their skin isn't as thick as mine? Like, what if they don't have somebody to go home to that I can say, oh, this happened at work today, and their partner's like, oh, you're fine, it's all this, and you have these things to do, and you have all this. It's like, what about the people who don't have someone to go home to, who don't have that support system, who, by the grace of whatever, would be cast in that role, and then they're misgendered constantly? Like, that's awful. And so I always am sort of like the bowl in the china cabinet, and people think I'm a bitch for it. But I just correct people, and then I don't acknowledge the aftermath of it. You know, I don't want the 20-minute apology.
Yeah.
I don't want to know that your cousin's non-binary. I don't give a fuck about that.
Stop it.
When I tell you what my gender is, all I need you to say is thank you, and then repeat my gender in the pronoun that you misused.
The thing that I have come across almost as frequently now is the hero of someone else correcting someone misgendering me, and that is to me more insufferable. Is someone misgender me, and the way I handle being misgendered is like, it's not worth. A lot of times it's not worth it. Unless we're going to be intimately working with each other, it's not worth me correcting you.
Yeah, it's a 30-minute conversation for a 10-second interaction.
Yeah.
I don't have that energy.
I don't have that kind of energy. But someone else who makes a show of correcting someone misgendering me makes me the most uncomfortable I have ever been in my entire life.
It's not about you.
Because it's not about me. It's about them showing that they are
I feel that. And I wanted to jump into about radical hospitality, because I think about, that's how I phrase it a lot in terms of, I used to work at Steppenwolf as well, and like that was when I was kind of in the process of coming out. And I had to really adjust when I left, because I only had to come out at Steppenwolf like maybe twice, you know what I mean? And I think there's a privilege at work of having to only come out once, because now that I'm out of that environment, I come out several times a day, every day. I'm correcting press releases, I'm correcting like everything, you know what I mean? And I think especially because a lot of people are like, the way you present, you know, have you considered being more masked? And I'm like, but I kind of feel like that shouldn't really matter. And so for me, it really became a sticking point of like, how do I interspace as hyper feminine as I feel like being, or as hyper masculine as I feel like being, and still assert that I deserve to be called by these pronouns? And furthermore, too, being seen as a person. I think that so often pronouns are inherently deferential, right? Oh, she's over there. Oh, they're over there. Oh, he's over there. It's when you're not really thinking about someone that you use them predominantly. When you're talking to someone and you use their pronouns, it's actually quite easy because you're looking in their face. But I think just the way that they function in our language, they are for when you're not being seen and not being specific. So in addition to just feeling like you're not respecting me or you didn't listen, it does feel like you just don't see me as a person. You see me as being functional to something. And I think if people don't just correct and move on, because a lot of times I say it's like getting someone's name wrong. Like if my name is John and you keep calling me Jim, it says more about you than it does about me, but I'm definitely going to walk away from that conversation thinking that like I don't respect you as much as I did when we entered it, even if I didn't correct you the entire time. And I know that that may not seem fair, but I also think like when you think about the fact that I've probably come out 5 times that day, like are you the one that really is going to matter or be the deal breaker? Is the part that I wish I could communicate the most often to people, like how you don't even know the impression that it makes on a person. It's not even that it hurts my feelings. It's just that I know something about you now.
Something that you said, Sawyer, about being cast in Pippin because of your energy, I've been thinking a lot about this, because as much as I want to talk about gender, there's a lot of times that I don't. And I just, because it takes so much energy. And I hope that we can get to a place, and I think we will. I don't know how quickly it will happen, but I hope that we get to a place where people are cast based on energy, based on how they fit the role, not regarding gender at all. Because I think like we are actors, and like there is more to a character, there's more to people than gender. And of course, especially in historical plays, it, you know, if you're talking about a woman, like I just did a show, Queen of the Mist, which was about the first woman to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and live. And like it's like the fact that she was a woman is huge, but I think there's more to the core of people that I get really frustrated when people are like, oh, we can't cast you as that gender because you don't get it. Where I think as a non-binary person, it's like I want to play Maggie and Brick, like I can do both of those. Like that's, and it's not the same for everybody, but I really hope we get to a place where we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that we aren't at a place where anyone can just be whomever and whatever, because I think everyone agrees in the audience that they're watching a play. That is not real.
Yeah.
These people are actors, they're clocking their coin, they're getting up there, they're showing us this beautiful piece of art, and then they're going home and they're living their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so frustrating being in rooms and being like, oh, I enter this space, I'm the only black person called in for this role. I'm the only black trans femme person called back for this role. I go into this room, I'm auditioning for mostly cis white men. Sometimes if the theater is a little more inclusive, there are a few women. Sometimes if it's a really good theater, there's like a black reader.
Say the truth, though.
And
Say
I'm
the
like,
truth.
I'm like, all right, I know that I'm right for this play. I know that I'm right for this role. I'm going to go into this room and I know that I'm going to kill it, but no matter how good of an audition I give, I have to be 1,000 times better than everyone else that walks into this room to even be considered to be called back. And it is so exhausting. And recently, because I did a show at Writers in 2017. I turned equity, and I haven't done a musical theater show since, which has been really hard for my mental health because, like, I'm like, oh, I went to school for musical theater. I studied this. I know that I can do this. Like, I can do it. And I go into these spaces, and I'm constantly being told I can't do the thing that I literally trained for.
I would say, like, it's not actually, like, your job to have to abdicate for those things, right? And I think that's why, like, when I think what happened to me, now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm processing this in the moment, but when I stopped acting, it was because I didn't have autonomy, and I didn't have power, and I couldn't control how I was seen anymore in a way that really scared me. And I think that vulnerability that actors have is one of the bravest things in the world. But in terms of the way that, like, I've chosen to attack it with, like, media, like, I started a company called Scripted, and like it's all theater critics and journalists, but we have like several genderqueer writers. Like, I'm not the only one, and what that has done to the way that like shows are perceived and the historical record of shows, and like teaching people how to find pronouns in their press packet, right? Like just really simple ways of like then those writers go out and like write at other places, and then when I'm on beat at a different newspaper, suddenly pronouns are in their style guide. And like how do we start making it just normal? Because I do really believe, unfortunately, that until there's a power structure that like equates like white cis male patriarchy and what that is, until there are writers that are seen as equal cultural critics to those people, or all of those things, that I don't know how accepting it's really going to be until that, because that's how people see us as human, unfortunately, is that cultural breakthrough of what is normal and what is seen every day and what is received and just seen as like, yeah, that's person. And the more writers that are able to do that and to be like, yeah, that's my normal, I don't know where you've been, like, I think the more power we will accrue in terms of being able to present ourselves however we want to, and to be able to lead with that conversation.
This is something I've discovered in the rehearsal room that I think is interesting, and I don't know if any of you have the same experience. One of the trickiest things, specifically in musical theater more than other theaters, because we have like ensembles. And we have ensembles that are very much binary. They're like, there's the female ensemble or the female identified ensemble, and then the male ensemble or the male identified ensemble. And then somebody slaps a gender inclusive sticker on a bathroom, like, look, we did it. But there's a little more work. And one thing that I found is like when I'm in an ensemble, like when I'm not like a lead character with a name specifically, but like if I happen to be dancing with the like females or the males, because musical theater is still so binary, it is, and like that's a whole different conversation of like, well, how do we conquer that? But in the meantime, I've been thinking about it really aggressively, because what I've realized is a lot of times directors and choreographers or whomever is in the room that is talking to me, if I'm in the room and I'm playing one of the ladies and like we're doing this moment, I'm referred to as she, which doesn't bother me. It really doesn't truly bother me in that moment, because I get it. Like, you have 20 minutes to put up an entire number. I understand that like you're trying to identify this way. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I just say I get it. And then if I'm playing somebody that's in pants and boots, whatever, all of a sudden I'm he. That truly, in the rehearsal process, doesn't bother me, because oftentimes it was just like with Miss Black when I was playing. I played several genders in this play, and when I was Marilyn, I was always referred to as she, because the director is thinking about the character. They're not thinking about me. Like, Marilyn moves over here, she does this. I played Marilyn Monroe. And then later I played David Bowie at another point. And it was always David Bowie does this, and then he goes here. But when the director was specifically talking about me, like, oh, Sawyer's late from a bathroom break, which happens a lot. But it's like, when that would happen, she would always be like, they're late from a bathroom break. And that gave me such dignity, right? Like, I understand that when she's speaking about me as this character. Now, this other theaters that I've worked at, it's like, but then it bleeds over. So, like, if I'm playing mostly male-identified people in the ensemble, all of a sudden I just become he. And then you go up to your stage manager, because you don't want to make a fuss. I don't want to lose my job because I'm being misgendered, which is like so silly, but it's also like that's real.
Yep.
And so like you go up and you like say like, hey, actually these are my pronouns, like if we could just like reinforce that, because that's your job. Your job is to protect us and to take care of us. Same with any director and choreographer. But in this new world where these people who are probably 20 years my senior, who have learned this world to be binary, like that is, it takes them a second to figure it out. But if they really care, they'll do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what anybody else's experience. Like I'm actually very curious because there have been other non-binary and trans people who've messaged me and like, what do you do when a director calls you this when you're in a group? But like if I'm playing like the coal miner with a group of coal mining guys, and like all the guys go over here, like it, for me, that doesn't bother me because I'm like, oh, I'm playing this guy.
Yeah.
But also like I don't know if I can speak for everybody on that.
I say it on the first day. I say, like, I'm going to refer to you as the gender of your character, and if that's going to be an issue, we can talk on break.
I love that.
Because, I mean, you know, like, I'm working so fast. Like, it's exactly that. Like, I'm working so fast, I don't want to take the risk of, like, as I'm getting to know people, misgendering anybody. And so I think it's important to clarify that I cast you to play a make-believe thing, and that character is gender.
Right,
You
it's
know what I
not
mean?
real.
That's brilliant, though, to, like, step into it first.
Another thing with being in a musical ensemble is voice type. You know, male voices versus female voices and soprano, alto, tenor, bass. That's
a great point.
It's always, I mean, there are vocal scores that say men and women.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even say like soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And so it's having to navigate like, okay, these are the higher voices, these are the lower voices, these are the voice parts that we're going to be singing in, you know, to find one that's the most, you know, be in the one that's most comfortable for you. And so often there's this idea that like, trans feminine individuals have higher voices. And I'm a baritone, like a 10 or 2 at best.
Yeah. Or adjusting musicals now for people who have different voices, because if you're a trans man or if you're non-binary on testosterone, your voice changes. It gets lower. I don't have an upper register anymore. I start to squeak, and then I lose my voice when I try to go higher. And so it's interesting because I was working on a new musical. I was like reading stage directions for a new musical called XY that involves an intersex person who was first put on estrogen and as a child to try to become more female, and then as they grow older, they switch. They have top surgery, and they come out as their true gender as being male. However, the part, if they ever wanted to cast a trans male, because there's a specific moment in the play where the character talks about their scars, the scars of their top surgery, and they take their shirt off and show the scars of their top surgery. So if you're going to cast a trans man who has those scars for real, it's the music director or whoever wrote that music is going to have to consider, has this person been on testosterone? How long have they been on testosterone? How has it changed their voice? And can I adapt the music to work for those strengths of that voice? And what does that do to change the original content or whatnot? Because again, we need to be writing more musicals, more plays, more movies, more TVs that feature us and tell our stories. But if it's going to be written from a cis or a cis white perspective, then you don't actually understand.
I did want to ask about Ring of Keys, because I know that we have 3 keys here. Ring of Keys is a national network of queer women, transgender, and gender nonconforming artists working professionally on and off stage in the field of musical theater. Like I said, we have 3 keys here: Parker, Hannah, and Sawyer. This question is directly from co-founder Andrea Prestinario. How has Ring of Keys helped elevate and amplify your work as a Chicago artist? In what ways has it connected you to industry professionals?
There's a Facebook group for us, which right now most of them are based in New York. And so there's so many like job postings and different meetups that happen in New York. I think we're still building it up here in Chicago. There have been some meetups, and also sharing the work in progress posting, and sharing different different opportunities that are out there. Again, like the Facebook boosting, but it's also been helpful finding other folks in musical theater, because as we were saying, it is very gendered and it's very binary, and that can be really frustrating at times. And I didn't realize it, but one of the ensemble members in Queen of the Mist was also a key. And we didn't realize that until Ring of Keys posted this thing, and we were both like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I didn't know you were one. And that was such a cool thing to be like, we're in this together.
I think what it's done is it opens the platform nationally and kind of internationally to have that support system and to see other people, other keys, it just gives you a sense of community in a much broader aspect, the way that we all sort of crave knowing that there are other people out there with our experiences.
Yeah. There's also Trans Actors Guild, which is another website, or another
Awesome.
not website, a Facebook group that Delia Crop started. And that has people from New York and LA and Chicago and pretty much all over the United States right now, and some international as well, that posts jobs for trans people, casting calls, things like that, advice and things like that. And so I think a lot of us are a part of that too.
Yeah.
And as far as musicals go, there's also the Trans Voices Cabaret, which is headed up by Lars Epsworth.
Yes.
Shout out to Lars.
Yes, thank you so much. And the mission of the Trans Voices Cabaret is to cast trans and non-binary actors in the roles that they see themselves as, and allow us to pick our own keys and work with someone to create the orchestrations to present a character that traditional musical theater doesn't allow us.
What are your hopes for the future of gender inclusion?
More.
Two words or less.
I can do this real fast.
Yes.
I would like to not have to do the Hidden Figures run across campuses just to pee. That's what I would like for my life.
Say that again.
You know in Hidden Figures when she has to use the blacks only bathroom and she has to run through the rain across campus? It's like that but with gender.
Got it.
Yeah, I would like a bathroom. That's where I'm at.
No, have to agree.
It sounds stupid.
I would like for gender inclusive casting to not be a concept and just a norm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm over like the weird fad of being like, we're inclusive, we're gonna use the language, but then not actually use you.
Yeah.
Like, it'll be cool once we get to a point where we're like, all right, we're all actors, we're gonna do this job. Who cares about anything else?
Yeah. Second it.
I think anyone who wants to write a casting notice should talk to Catherine Miller about how to write a casting notice.
Catherine Miller.
They are also a non-binary person in the theater community who is a casting director. So if you're looking to find out how to write a casting notice for us, talk to them. Catherine
Hire
Miller.
them.
And also hire them. And pay them.
Yeah.
And pay us. Sorry.
Yeah, my dream is for people to be cast as like who they are, like Han and I were saying earlier, by our energy, by our personalities, by the way that we affect the world, and not by whatever you perceive our genders or our gender to be.
Less of it, but agency for the actor and the ability to decide what parts of their queer experience they'd like to put on display, and also to be appropriately compensated for any consultation they do during that process.
My God.
Had to get that in there.
I can't thank you enough for joining us. This has truly been so wonderful. I mean that so much, and I wish we had another 2 hours at least, because I feel like we could keep going, no problem. Again, thank you. And that's all. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, especially. Until next time.